because of their inaction and I would say cowardice in a lot of cases. People in Ottawa were actually dying. Certainly the politics story in this town for this year has been opioids and this slow rolling crisis that we've had all these government officials really struggling to figure out what to do with. It's been building for years. It's been going on slowly. I think we've seen it with overdoses and addiction, beginning with OxyContin and then progressing to heroin and other forms of opioids. But the real killer, and literally the real killer, has been fentanyl. And once powdered fentanyl got into the drug supply in Ottawa, as these things do, it tended to start in the West, made its way here, then drug users started dying. Who cares about drug users, right? And that's often been the attitude that a lot of people have. I think people are accustomed to seeing reports of deaths from overdoses in places like Sandy Hill and Lower Town. It doesn't make it okay, but people are accustomed to it. But I think when teenagers in the suburbs started overdosing and when fentanyl started cropping up in counterfeit prescription painkillers, things that people thought were safe, I think it started to hit home in a way that the drug problem generally had not. And all of our authorities were really struggling to keep up with it. They would just kind of get their heads around one thing that was going on, and then along would come another hit, and they had to figure out what to do. While politicians were reluctant to accept that just tougher policing wouldn't be enough. I think in the summer when the group called Overdose Prevention Ottawa set up their tent in Lower Town in Raphael Burnett Park, which is, I mean, it's called a park, but it's actually just this kind of strip of grass. It's like a no man's land. But they said, and I think they were right, that the governments were just not moving quickly enough, that there were supervised injection sites that had official approval that were in the pipeline, but they were not open yet, and people were literally dying of overdoses because they were using drugs in places where people were not paying attention to them. And if you overdose and nobody's watching, then you die. And it's as simple as that. It's impressive how they threaded the needle on this thing, because I think from a medical and scientific perspective, the solutions like supervised injection sites, or at least maybe not solutions, but the measures you take to address the problem are fairly obvious. But to get them past politicians is almost impossible because voters are squeamish. And no matter what the science says, getting the government involved in supervising drug use is not something that a lot of people instinctively support. But this is a thing that basically governments have been forced to act on, and watching the way that pressure has grown has been, from my perspective as a journalist, a really fascinating story all year.